Hey,
Hi.
hi, how are you?
It's so good to see you.
So good to see you too. It's been a long,
Yes,
it's been
I
way
do.
long.
I miss you. We haven't
I know, I've been in like baby land and but even more so. It's like every time I think I'm gonna get a little break and I'm like, no, not so much. But
no.
yeah, I was so inspired, or was it? I think it was this past weekend, and
Mhm.
I had to reach out to you because it was something that's been on my mind, and I know you and I are like kind of on this like same wavelength of how we feel about Pilates and like working with people, and especially with your therapy background and counseling background. I thought it was such a good topic, and it's something that I hear my students ask about, and I think it's the skill set is so important in teaching,
Yes.
but you
Yes.
have to look at the whole person.
Mhm.
You have to just see the whole person, not just, the movements that they're doing. So,
Yes.
what I guess spearheaded the inspiration, it's been something that's been on my mind for a while, but I couldn't figure it, like put it into words, was I had a session with Carrie Regan. It was just like a small group session that they did, I think it was Pilates Sister Squad or something.
Okay.
And I trained with Carrie when I lived in New York when she was at Brooks Seiler Studio. And I remember like at the time when I was there, I had just gone through a divorce. I went back to New York City to like be immersed back in like Pilates and just like be there for
Hmm.
me. And
Yes, I hear
I
you.
remember just going through a battlefield of different emotions when I was there, like in New York, and super
Yeah.
happy, but then like, okay, and I'm in this new life, like sometimes sad, sometimes like feeling overwhelming sense of joy. And
Hmm.
it was interesting because like like when you get pushed like physically,
Yes.
sometimes different emotions come up,
Hmm.
and like I think that was one of the biggest things that I think that I felt when I was training with Brooke and Carrie, is that I really felt like they read me as a person when I
Yes.
came into the room. And you've worked with me. You know that I like push myself so
Yes.
hard,
Yes. Yes.
and I don't usually hold back, but then there's sometimes I'm like, okay, I can't, like I just hit like a wall, or if I go there I'm gonna have like a breakdown emotionally. We've all seen it with clients, like, okay, you're
Yes.
all of a sudden your client seems like they're doing well, and then all of a
And then
sudden
burst
they're
into
like
tears. Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
exactly. So I
Yes.
think
Which is
that
awesome when you're a guy and you're like,
uh, exactly, like what do
what?
I do now?
Yeah.
So I think it's just like she was talking about how Romano would just, train the whole person, like really read the person when they came into the room.
Yes.
And like she gave an instance too of like how like when someone comes in and they're kind of rounded over and their whole like their energy is like drawn down, how to like
Yes.
do chest opening and lifting, and like, and yes, I think that our body also presents different holding patterns.
Hmm.
um, and and then for someone that's like super stiff, to like get them to flow.
Yes.
But also to just like she was talking about how to like people that have had injuries and have had things that they're working through, how
Hmm.
the body itself responds so much more
Yes.
to when the person trusts you, and when
Yes.
there's like this dialogue between the instructor and the student. And I think
Hmm.
that's I think the one thing that's been like on my mind for so long is like, what is it about some of these people that are great instructors, even if have only been teaching for 2 years, whatever,
Yes.
20 years, like there is that element of like them just really being quote unquote present with
Yes.
the person in that
Right.
moment, in that day, kind of like what you were saying with your client earlier, like, you know, good or better, but not good, right?
Yes.
But just being like, okay, like just sitting back and like letting it kind of sit with him for a moment and letting him just
Yes.
go through it. Because I think as we move our energy, not just in our body, but like emotionally, spiritually, physically, like,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah. I'm gonna read this quote comment
yeah.
here. This is so great. To remember that we are both body and spirit, and taking care of one is taking care of the other. Can't just focus on one. You do this so great,
Oh,
Jamie.
Oh, it's Nina. I wasn't even looking at the comments. Hey.
Um, and okay, so I want to frame this conversation a little bit because there are people like Tammy here in the room who is like a trauma-informed approach and has a counseling background, and I have a counseling background too. But there's something to be said for someone who has the ability to create trust with their clients.
Yeah.
You do not need a high level master's degree to be able to build trust with another person.
No.
And I think that that is one of those things that creates space for us to be able to explore how to navigate these situations. Like Leslie and I were just saying a minute ago, like you could be way outside of your scope, but if you have trust with the person,
Mm.
then I know I can hand them off to someone who is going to take care of them because they trust me to know that this person, this other person who is a stranger, will have their best interests at heart still.
Yeah.
So that's one side of it. And the other side of it is understanding like our scope of practice in the sense of there people come to us and they're going to have situations, issues, life experiences that predate our experience, obviously,
Mm.
and that is so much bigger than us. So I it can't be on me within the movement practice to help them with their poor self-esteem.
Yeah.
What we do can be a catalyst for that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that what I could be with them for 10 years and they could still be just as stuck on the
Right.
last day as on the first day.
Yeah. Right.
So it's just appreciating all those different elements in it are really, you know,
Yeah.
part of it, right?
Well, there's that saying too that like no one can help themselves but themselves, right? So like, I mean, the person has to be open and receptive to, and like you said, we're not therapists. We're teaching exercise, and we
Yeah.
know, as we know, like that teaching exercise is usually, like you said, a catalyst for other things and opening up other areas in our life.
Yeah.
You know,
Right. Yeah. So how do we sharpen the skills of discernment?
I think it honestly starts with being present with yourself, like in
Okay.
your own practice. Like that was something that I struggled with that I've struggled with in the last 2 years since I've had the girls. Like I'm in a totally different body. I don't like it. Like going back to that like whole kind of thing.
Yeah.
But also just like being meeting myself where I'm at in
Mhm.
it in the practice, not comparing myself to something else, like treating myself as if I was treating my client.
Okay.
um, so I think that's part of it. And also, like, I think too, as a beginner level teacher, like if I'm referencing kind of like where my world is right now,
Sure.
um,
I ask you.
everyone's so worried about the program design and like the what exercises I'm going to plan for that day and do, but that all gets thrown to the wind,
Yes.
when someone comes in, whether
Hmm.
they're physically something is different, mentally something is different, spiritually something is different, like, and then you're like, okay,
Yes.
this isn't working, and you have to reroute. And I think just being aware, like really trying to just not be in your own head about
Yes.
looking at that other person, like think this is what I'm going to impart on you, right? Like
Right.
it's like,
Yes.
no, I'm going to
You're
help
coming
you guide.
alongside. Yeah, you're coming with me as I take you on this workout. And
Exactly, not
yeah,
like
yeah.
forcing this on someone. So I think that's a big part of it, right? Like just kind of um, reading the person and seeing like, okay, this isn't working. Like stop pushing someone to do something that's not working in their body. And it maybe it's just that day, maybe it's this month or whatever. Like
Yeah, right.
taking them through. So I think I saw Allison write, how do you build trust?
How do you build trust?
And I think it's through, in my experience, it's just being there for that person and kind of like we're saying, like be present with them, asking them and
Hmm.
checking in with them,
Yep.
like periodically too, just to make sure that you're not just imposing all of these exercises on them,
Yes.
like you're really kind of like asking them. Like a lot of times we get into the mode of like working with people for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 9 years, and
Hmm.
then we never like do a check in with them, like, hey, how's
Yes.
it going? Like,
Right.
do you have any new goals in your life? Like, do you have, like,
Hmm.
a lot of times we're seeing these people like 2, 3 times a week, but we're never really like,
Well,
you
I
know,
can, as a personal trainer back in the day, and even
yeah,
now, still, I think that how's it going? Do you have any new goals?
yeah,
That is scary
yeah,
because they just might say, I'm not feeling this anymore.
yeah,
I'm not sure if this is still working for me. It's funny that you mentioned that. This is
yeah,
actually the last time I'm going to renew. Yeah.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to open up to get negative feedback, so you don't open up for any feedback.
But I would open up for the negative feedback because
Okay.
that person's holding space in your life that shouldn't be there. So let them go so that
Yeah.
someone else can come in, right? So like,
Right.
I mean, Heather and I always talk about like we hold no prisoners, like
Yes.
in
Yes.
business
You
and
hold no
in life
prisoners.
or whatever, right? So
Yes.
it's like
Yes.
I think it's important to like just check in. Like think about how many people just stay in whatever
Hmm.
relationships, jobs, situations,
Right.
whatever, and don't ever check in with themselves, right?
Yes. Okay.
And,
So, yeah, sorry to cut you off there, but I
no,
think that's what we're getting to is that thin line between their personal relationships and their professional relationships, right?
mm-hmm.
So the person who doesn't have the courage to say, who just I'm just going to renew again, like you're holding them a prisoner,
Yeah,
so to speak. I like that
yeah,
terminology because like they're just going to renew again, and it's going to be on auto renew, and they're going to go through it, and they're going to be miserable, and they're not going to
yeah,
see any difference, and all those different things. But then their personal life, they don't know how to put a vocabulary around. I'm not happy right now. I
yeah.
need this in this relationship. So we're holding space here, which translates to the rest of their
Mm-hmm.
lives.
But that's
So
also a catalyst, right? So, like, you
that's
might
also a
be the
catalyst.
one person that might say, how's it going? Well, not great. This isn't working for me anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how you respond to that, right,
Yes.
is like, okay, like, and just say, like, I'm here for you if you ever need me. Like,
Hmm.
I'm happy to try A, B, and C or whatever. But of
Yep.
course, I understand. You like, you got to go do what you got to do. Like, one of my very first clients, actually, she trained with me, like did like a small package. I think it was like 5 pack or something, and then
Okay.
of privates. And then she left because it wasn't right for her at the moment. And
Yes.
and like she had loved it, and then she came back, and then was like forever there,
Yes.
right? So like
Yes.
she's like one
Yes.
of the only people I still ever see every once in a while. So like I think it's I mean, how you do Pilates is how you do life, right?
Life.
Like I make that
Yes.
joke, like
Yeah.
but it's true, and I think everything is everything. It's always the same. So
Hmm.
I
It's
think
so
that
funny. Yeah.
Pilates can be used in that. That's what Pilates has always been to me. It's always been like this lifeline to myself, right? So where I'm feeling
Yes.
like how like and sometimes like you go through life and you're not actually thinking. You're just going into this like rat race or like
Yes.
hamster wheel.
Life is just happening to
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like think about contrology. Oh my God. It's like return to life, like all of these things that I think that maybe wasn't because there's also some other stuff about it that's a little scary, but like,
Right. Yeah.
but it's like it really to me has always been more than just Pilates, right? And I think for a lot of my
Yes.
clients, it's the same. And um, I think what an honor it is for us as teachers to be able to I grow from my clients, right?
For
Like I grow from
sure.
my students. I grow from that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know,
Lisa Chang here is a friend of mine, and when she was on a few weeks ago, she was saying, how you do one thing is how you do all things,
mm, yeah,
right? And how we do Pilates is how we do life. Like there's so many parallels in that.
yeah,
And I think that that's the same for us as teachers. And I was just thinking as you're saying, that conversation, how are things going? And that could be an uncomfortable situation. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of that relationship. Like we have to lean into that in the sense that, okay, well, let's have that conversation about the fact that my cues aren't working for you, or that I haven't asked you this, or that when I
yeah,
said something, it might have offended you, so that I can make my pivots as a teacher so that this
right,
relationship can be richer. That's the work that I need to do here as
yeah,
well. And you mentioned divorce earlier, and for myself in my past marriage, we used to pride ourselves on like not ever getting into fights. and say, oh, we're doing great, we never fight, whatever, and now we're divorced. So obviously it wasn't perfect, right? Like we never actually leaned into conflict, because I believe
Yeah.
that conflict should make a relationship richer
Yeah.
if you're on the same page, if you're working towards the same thing. So it's the same thing with our clients. If we have a conflict, if there's some dissatisfaction, lean into those conversations so that we can make that relationship richer,
Exactly. Exactly.
instead of pretend that there's no, if we keep our head in the sand and never have
Right.
those hard conversations and we think everything's fine,
Yeah.
and then they bounce and then we have no clue where they went,
Yeah.
and then they're looking for an excuse to leave.
And you might have gotten stale as a teacher. You might have gotten comfortable. You might gotten like whatever, like that's why it's so important to, like, I think another reason why it's so important to check in. Like, it helps
Yes.
our growth as well as theirs, like.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's certain seasons, like I'm realizing
Mm-hmm.
that now. Like there's certain seasons, which is crazy that I'm like just figuring this out at 43, but like there's
Right.
there's certain seasons, and like it's okay, like to be where you're at, and
Yes.
it gives you a little bit of grace.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Absolutely. So, okay, so Jamie, this is the other thing that I've been thinking about as we've been talking about how
Yeah,
we, look into the whole human and all those things. My own personal friendships, how do I take care of my friends outside of work? And what does that look like in terms of my interactions with my clients? Right? So when someone's asking earlier about how do you build trust, it's like, well, how do you build
yeah,
trust with your friends? Like, how
yeah,
intimate are your friendships?
yeah,
Are they all superficial, or can you have hard conversations? Can you share
yeah,
what's going on with your
yeah,
finances or your love life or whatever? There's a level of intimacy that you have with your friends, and how you take care of your friends and how
yeah,
often you reach out to them and stuff. And then that also translates to how you take care of your clients, I think.
yeah. I mean, I think like Brene Brown, I listened to a while ago, and she was saying that, like, not everyone deserves like
You.
the inside of you, right? Like,
Yes, yes,
not
yes.
everyone deserves that. And I think with clients, there's always ways to, like, I always try to hold a professional boundary, like, even
Mm-hmm.
though I'm holding space for them or whatever, like, you still need to have that boundary there if
Of
when
course.
when they're a paying client, and I think it's really important. I mean, some of my clients have become really good friends over the years, but like there's still also like there's a little bit of business and friendship, and then as
Of
far as
course.
like friends go, I think like Brene was saying, it's like not everyone deserves that part of you where you have to share, um,
Mm.
but I think that the best friends that you have are the ones that you can have hard conversations with, that you can, like, you know um, really dive deep in, and kind of go back and forth and have maybe not even the same mindset in a lot of ways. Like, you can
Right.
have differences, but you accept those differences, um, and you are still friends regardless. It doesn't matter. Like,
Yes.
actually, it's funny that Nina is popping on, but like, Nina and I, like, Nina was one of my first clients in Michigan, and
Mm-hmm.
like we had total different views on certain issues regarding like faith or um, uh, in like different political issues, but we were still like, she's in Norway now and I'm in Sweden, so it's awesome, we're like close again.
No,
But
amazing.
like, I mean, we had such an amazing friendship and connection with each other, even though we stood on opposite sides. But I think one of the interesting aspects of that is that we actually listened to each other.
Yes.
We
Yes.
heard each other. We didn't
Thank
try
you.
to think in our own mind of what we were going to say back to that person. We just listened to what they had to say and what they had to offer, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to like thinking of our comeback or thinking of like what we want to dive in on what we want to say next.
Yes.
You
Here's my
know,
next argument point.
Right, exactly. And I think that's, goes right back to that whole like being present and holding space for that person. Like, you're not just
Yes.
imposing what you want on them. You're really just having like that dialogue back and forth, and that in Pilates has to do with like teaching teaching energy, right? Like, it's like, I
Yes.
forget who said it. Somebody said it to me when I was first learning. It's like teaching Pilates is like a dance with your clients, right? You're
Mm.
like flowing back and forth with them constantly in an
Yes.
exchange of energy, really,
Yes.
you know? And
Yes.
that's how you can maybe build that trust and build that connection with them, you know?
So we've talked about trust, and now you just brought up listening.
Mm,
And I love that. Like what you're saying. It's kind of as I was listening to you say all that stuff, it's like yes. It's a big yes because as a teacher, there's a conversation that I'm having with the body,
mm-hmm,
the human that is right there,
mm-hmm.
and I can't just be talking the whole time. I need to be listening as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, true. And seeing and feeling like
Right.
it's not one dimensional.
Right.
Like
So
you're
how do I
there in all the
listen?
ways.
Right. So in a sense, it's like how do I listen with my eyes? How do I listen with my hands?
Exactly.
I can't just be like, okay, the next exercise is. It's like, whoa, what just
Yeah.
happened there? Let's look at
Mm-hmm.
that a little more, right? Like, so that sense of listening, like, well, from a counseling perspective, active listening,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
It's so
Or
true. Like
yeah,
I'm thinking too of that, just like, you know, we spend all this time when we're, when we're first getting certified, like everyone hates the observation hours. Right? Like no one's like, oh yay, I've got 200 hours of observation I've got to complete. Let me just sit down and watch. But
yes,
there's so much that like you can take in watching, right? Like
yes,
how's that person's body like? I mean, whether it's something that you want to follow yourself or like, but you can read you can watch the energy of the person that's teaching. How are they in their own body with the client's body, like how
yes,
in regards to not just spotting and positioning but just
hmm
like energy, right? Like,
yes,
you know, I think that that's, you know, yes, of course, looking at, I mean, in the beginning you're probably looking a lot at just the exercises, but there's also like, you know, it's nice to just sit in a room sometimes and just observe
yes,
what's going on. Like
right,
stop and be
absolutely.
present.
Being present, right?
Yeah,
Exactly. Being
yeah,
present is so key. It's
yeah,
almost like, if you're listening to music, I can go on Spotify and just like select a song and just press play and it
yeah.
just runs, right? And it'll just run forever and it'll choose the next song for me. I don't have to do anything. I can just completely
Yeah.
zone out. Or I can take a record off my shelf and put the record
Mm,
on, and now I have to listen. It's like, did it just skip there? Like, did I hear the wrong word? Oh,
yeah,
like four songs, and now I have to get up and turn the record over. It's a different listening experience than listening to
right,
digital music.
exactly. And just because it's also too like there's probably some like ritual aspect and like nostalgia and like feeling of it being something special, right? Because it's a
Yes.
record and it's like it's the old record player and the fact that it's not coming across this like digital platform, right? Like
Right.
back to your like
Yes.
classic cars. Yes, they feel whatever, but it's also like
Right.
that feeling, like that same thing. Like, you know,
Yes.
I think we should be doing that every single time a new person walks in the room, like a new client. Like,
100%. Yeah.
okay, even if you see that person 3 days a week, like, all right, new moment. No, regardless
Mm.
of what happened before you walked in the studio, regardless of like what happened the hour before or whatever, like taking that
Yes.
moment of like, okay, we're not listening to, I mean, I should not say this out loud because I'm in Sweden, the land of Spotify, but like we're putting on the record player.
Yes. You can just like whisper that. Like,
And I'm like, oh, they're
yeah.
like, it's like it's everywhere here. But
Yeah, no,
yeah,
that's so true. And actually, just a practical example of that. This morning,
yeah,
one of my clients, this gentleman I've been working with over the last few months, there'll be days where we fly through a bunch of exercises and we're doing all these different things. And you can still see, like, I have the push to bar set up from earlier.
yeah,
And I said to him this morning, okay, I just want you to listen to your body this morning.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So instead of us doing like 5 or 6 exercises, we're gonna do this one exercise. And I want you to listen to your body. I want you to see where your foot is. I want you to feel this.
mm,
And we're gonna do a lot of reps. And I want you to like pay attention to your feet. Now pay attention to your heel. Now pay
yeah,
attention to your hip. Now pay attention to your back. Now pay attention to, and it's like I was teaching him to listen to his body instead of
mm-hmm.
teaching him to just listen for what the next cue
Yeah.
is.
That's awesome. That's amazing. That's, I think, the best gift that you can give someone, right? You just made them present in their own self, right?
Yes.
You made them responsible for their own. body.
Responsible. See that again. I'm writing down responsible for their own body.
Yeah. So no one can
It's
help themselves but themselves, right? So you're just
right.
giving them the tools to like help themselves.
Say some more about that. Responsible for their own body. Let's unpack that because I think that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
so huge.
It's so funny. Like, so back when I was living in New York, I was working with the shaman, Jonathan Hammond. He's amazing. He has a book out now. And it was really interesting when I first started seeing him, like, oh my God, I was like, you are helping me do this and you are helping me do this. And like, I was like, I can't believe it. Like, all these things you are doing for me, right? Like, that's what
Hmm.
was in the mindset that I was like in. And he's like, no, no, no. Like, you showed up and I'm only giving the conscious to the unconscious, but you're doing it yourself. And that's like,
Yes.
I was like, oh my God, like, yes, like I'm in there, right? Like I am the one that's doing it for myself. And that, like, when we can do that as teachers, right? Letting the clients kind of, like you said, be in their own body, experience that for themselves. Like, you're just helping them, guide them along that same journey and the path. I mean, our
Yes.
goal is that they one day can do this on their own, right?
Right. Yes.
I mean, they're like children. We don't want to keep them. I love my kids. I want to have them around me all the time. But it's like at the same time, like I want them to have that independence. I want them to have
Yes.
that strength on their own. I want them to feel like they don't need me. Do you know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
I think that that's another important thing too. It's like, don't hold all your cookies back. Like, you
Yes.
know, I mean, they're only gonna, people are only gonna take in what they can take in at the moment too. At the same time, like they're probably
Yes.
just gonna keep coming back to you for more of the cookies. But it's like, and if they're not, it's okay. Like, let it go. But yeah, like
Mm.
that's a great gift to like give someone, to like just be there. Like, watch where like you said, watch where your foot's going. Watch, you're getting them out of the hamster wheel,
Yes.
you know,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
and that helps you like mentally,
Oh,
right? Like,
absolutely.
you got them
Yeah.
out of their hamster wheel for that hour, which can translate into like out of their hamster wheel and a lot of other things in life.
Right. Exactly. And in the same way you're saying how this person brought you back to looking at yourself. I think of, like, I have this one lady, a client of mine, who will say like, "Oh, Martin, I got a compliment. I no, how'd she say it? She goes, you got a compliment today." And I was like, okay. She said, well, someone noticed this about me, and I said, well, I'm working with this trainer and whatever. So she's
Yeah.
like, well, you got a compliment. I was like, you did the work. Like, I mean,
Exactly.
it's like you did the, like,
Yeah.
you're the one who's showing up, you're the one who's changing your diet, you're the one who's getting enough sleep, you're the one who's happy in your relationship, you're the one who's putting in your work when you're here.
Yeah.
That's your compliment. That's not my
Yeah.
compliment.
But you were the catalyst that helped them like get there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You were present in yourself as a teacher, showing them the things that you have, and they worked alongside you, right? It's
Right.
like a cooperative event.
It's a totally a cooperative event. And isn't it
Yeah.
funny banter when both of us want to give credit to the other person?
I know. Well, yeah, because we always like look outside of ourselves, right? Instead of
Yes.
like going inside.
Yes.
Not to say that I'm like Jonathan was amazing. I mean, it had like of course I still honor him as a person that helped me, and same thing with all of the different teachers that I've had. Like, I still honor them so much and how they were able to um, give part of their selves and their knowledge to and
Yes.
share. Like, that's amazing. Like, there's so many good people in our industry that are doing that, which is amazing, which
Yes.
is so nice. You know?
Yeah, well said. I think that is, like the saying, like when the student is ready, the teacher
Yeah,
appears.
yeah.
Like there's a sense that, there are certain people, you have your people out there that you will pour everything into,
Mm.
and it just, they just absorb it and they want more. And then there's someone else that comes along, you pour everything into them, and they're like, and this is our last session. Thank you so much. It's like,
Yeah.
what? I just gave you, because
But
it just
remember,
doesn't.
that person was a space holder for someone else that should be there, which is why
Right.
that dialogue should always be happening, so that they can get
Yes.
out of the way. Maybe they need
Yes.
to be with someone else, and down that avenue,
Hmm.
you know?
So how much of this conversation do you have with a new teacher? This is high level stuff, Jamie. Like when
Yeah,
someone's coming in and
it's
they're just trying to learn how to
no,
teach someone how to do,
yeah,
like,
I'm not going into like the spirituality of all. I mean, I
yeah,
just
on day one.
yeah, exactly. Like I don't actually have a lot of that conversation with a lot of people. It's like a very small handful of people. I think like you and I have connected in a way, like in that level. Do you know what I mean? And I think
Hmm.
that that's like I've trained with you at TRX. You've killed me, killed me, but you've also been there for me in those moments where I was like, I didn't sleep the night before and I was like not feeling emotionally okay. But you're like,
Yes.
okay, you read that about me online and we're like, okay, this is what she can do today. And you checked in. Like you were like,
Yes.
how you feel? Like, and it was more
Hmm.
than just like, how you feeling? Are your hamstrings sore kind of thing? Like
Yes.
you're kind of there. Like, so I think, you know, as I'm starting to get back into my own practice a little bit and like having that one session that kind of brought me back to New York, like it was like
Hmm.
everything kind of just like clicked for me. So I think I try to just be present and show up for my students when they're first learning.
Yes.
And sometimes that means I don't give a lot of cues. And sometimes that means like
Hmm.
I just am in like, it's great that you're let them move. Just let them feel
Yes.
what they feel, and then
Hmm.
in other instances there's other students that are like you said, sponges that just like
Yes.
soak it all up and they hang on every word, which is, you know but it's also like I think, and I kind of go back to this with clients as well, like not everyone that doesn't seem like they're soaking up everything from you is
Yes.
not getting a lot. Like
Right.
sometimes we think that because they're not that enthusiastic learner, whatever, or client, right? I had this client that was in Philly, and like I thought she hated my guts. Like I was like, seriously, like she just
Yeah.
I mean, she was so mean, so mean to me. And I was a new teacher, so I didn't. I was just like, well, I got to pay my rent in Philadelphia. Like, I have to figure
Yes.
this out. Like, she wasn't nice. She wasn't nice to anyone. So I was like, okay, it's not me personally. She's just not really pleasant. And it was crazy because, like, first she came once a week, then she came twice a week, and I'm like, oh my god, she's like still in my books. Like, this is nuts.
Yes.
Like, she's sometimes would yell at me, like, oh my god, this hurts. Like, and I'm like, okay, like let's try something new. Like, and I could finally, she was in a lot of pain. Like
Mm.
she was not, and over time it got a little bit better, but she was always not really nice. And then I moved away from Philadelphia and
Yes.
she like lost it. She was like, you can't leave me. You don't
Huh.
understand. You've changed my life. And I'm like, what? Are you
Yeah.
serious? Like, I feel like, I feel like you hate my guts. Like,
Right.
oh
Yeah.
my God. But that's sometimes we don't know. Like, and I would still ask her,
You
how are
don't
you doing?
know.
How, whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
for
you
sure.
don't know what impact you're having on
Right.
someone, you know? I
Yep.
think, I think I rambled a little bit too much, but like
No,
going
actually,
back to,
you're on track. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
but just going back to that, like, how do I do that with new students and new clients? Like,
Hmm.
just be present and kind of just read. And of course, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to understand where they're at,
Yes.
but just,
Yes.
I think taking a step back and watching and
Hmm.
kind of seeing and going back to that whole thing, like I have an idea in mind what I want to do. However, I've got
However,
to see how this person's giving
yes.
feedback to me.
Right. Well, okay, so and then going back to this lady who you thought was a difficult client, but actually was in
Yeah,
love with what she was doing,
yeah,
that like we started out the conversation saying like you went to your in your divorce and this became the safe place.
yeah.
And I was trying to find this book before we came on, and there's a book that talks about a business book where it talks about your third home.
Yes.
Like
Oh my God. I know exactly what you're talking about, but I don't know the name of the book.
me either. I was like
It's
struggling. I
like,
couldn't find it.
yeah, like how Starbucks made in the beginning, like the lounge
Yes.
area, because it was like the third place. Like it's not
Your
your home,
third
it's not your work,
place.
it's the third place. Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
exactly. So she may have been going through a whole bunch of stuff, but this
mm,
third place, this third home,
yeah,
she doesn't have to tell you her life story. She could be coming
no,
in just because she wants to move. But in doing
yeah,
that, this is her home, this is her
Yeah.
third home, this is her third
Yeah.
place, this is that safe place.
Yeah.
So we need to be diligent in the way that we present ourselves, creating a place where there's trust, where we can
Mm-hmm.
listen, all these things, even if we don't get the story, even if we don't see the fruit of what we're doing, we
Right.
just do it because of who we are.
Right.
And we may, like that person may see the benefit of that 10 years from now, but we're doing it diligently right now.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
I think that that's like how we just have to keep showing up how we show up, right? And let
Yes.
whoever needs to come into our door come into our door
Mm-hmm.
and, have what they need to have from us, and we be
Yes.
there along the way. Like it's not, yeah, that's awesome. I love that you read that book. I forgot about that.
I know. I gotta, if anyone
I
knows
know.
what
I
that
gotta try
book
to find it.
is,
I know.
yeah.
Please post it in the comments.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's such a, yeah. When I was opening my first studio, that was one of the things that I was like, I really wanted to create that environment, right? Like I
Yes.
really
Yes.
wanted that space where it was the third,
Hmm?
the third place.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a.
Actually, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no. So there's a bunch of comments here I want to get to, but
Oh,
finish your
cool.
thought because this is all like.
My first studio, I when I was it grew really fast, and we had to get into a bigger space, and we went back into like I went back into like rebranding essentially when we were opening the bigger space, and the my manager, who is now the now owner of the studio, Lisa Paparelli, she I was like, okay, we have to think of like different things, and like I was in the race of, yes, I'm present with my clients, but I was also in the race of like, oh my god, I just got to keep showing up for business, keep showing up for da da da, and I
Yes.
wasn't like seeing the impact of the people, right? Like I was just like
Mm-hmm.
going and doing my thing, and then
Yes.
she's like, I know our new slogan. It's "We Change Lives," and I was like, what? She goes, think about it. Think about like, and she gave all these different instances, and I was like, yeah, you're right, because like I feel that Pilates changes people's lives. It doesn't have to be
Yes.
like, you know, a physical thing. It can be
Mm-hmm.
literally like mentally,
Yes.
or spiritually, whatever. And it does. I feel like we do change lives, And it was interesting. I didn't see the gravity of that until I left, right? And I try.
Yes.
That is one thing I actually do say to students. I'm like, sometimes you don't realize the gravity of what you're doing until you're not there anymore, and or you have to go, and then they come out of the woodwork and tell you like, no, 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 like,
Yeah.
or like, oh my god, you've done da 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 da, because sometimes that conversation doesn't come up until you're leaving.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. No, that's a good point. I'm gonna read some of these comments here. Ali wrote Pilates earlier said, I find that I share a bit of myself or my struggles with Pilates or whatever, so my clients can see that I'm a real person too,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, so having that vulnerability, that humanity to it is key. And Ashley had a bunch of comments I was trying to get to here too. Ashley was saying earlier, learning to come out of autopilot of the scripts that we've been taught and translate the work in our own way when we truly connect with people. I call that putting your signature
Mm-hmm.
on the work. That exact thing there. Yes. And love that conversation. So important. Lots of hearts, such a continuous journey. That's what Debbie Robbins was saying earlier. Coach Robin Renee's here. The second comment here from Ashley saying, I love the idea of encouraging autonomy, being a partner in someone versus always having to be the leader expert that someone follows blindly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's definitely key. And then the last comment here from Helen saying it's just Pilates, but in fact, it's so much more for many of our clients. I realized this over the years, realizing this made me so much more compassionate as a person and a teacher, and so much more intentional, right? Like
Yeah.
whether like not that you're trying to change lives every time you touch somebody, but like
No.
just
Yeah.
knowing that there's a potential for that and that like
Yeah.
there is power in what we're doing. So key.
Yeah.
So looking at the whole human is the title, and that's basically what we're talking about. Like we're not just about just regurgitating the memorized exercises, actually looking at the person and how dynamic they are, and how can we be better listeners, and how can we encourage that trust, and how can we see where they are and meet them at that point today, and not assume that because they were great yesterday that they're gonna be great today. Like check in with them today again, right? Like you had them on Monday and they could have killed every exercise, and then their kids force them to not get a good night's sleep the night before, or they got a promotion, everything's amazing now, and then they're just in a different headspace and they can't focus today, take that check in with them today, right?
Yeah. So good.
Mm-hmm. Man,
Thank
look
you
at
so
this.
much for having this
Yeah,
conversation with me. It's such a, I think it's such a good, fun topic, like,
it is a fun topic. It's a fun like check-in topic too, right? Like, I mean, I feel like this is something as a podcast I want to just put back out there, that almost like a textbook on your bookshelf. Like, you don't have to read the whole
yeah,
book, but you
yeah,
can just like take it down, read something, and just put it back on the bookshelf and apply it.
yeah.
Uh,
It's true,
yeah,
right? Because it's not like humans are not one dimensional, right? So like neither is teaching Pilates. We're in the, I mean, to bring it back to work, like we're in the people business. Like
yeah,
yes, we teach exercise, but we're at the end of it, we're in the people business. And Pilates
yeah.
is an amazing method that allows us to have such an incredible vehicle to be able to help, but it's also like it's about the people.
Yes. Okay, I want to bring you back for part three because that just gave me
Okay.
like a whole separate thought.
Okay.
Um, I'll just write that down for next time.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Yes, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. Thank you for all the comments and stuff. Like I said, like this was definitely uh, a great conversation and just a great Friday conversation. Like I'm glad
Yeah,
we didn't have to like wrestle with anything super hard. We could just
me
talk
too.
about how amazing our work is. So
That's awesome. Thank you,
yes,
Martin.
thanks so much, Jamie.
All right,
All
talk to you
right, take
soon.
care, man.
Bye bye.
Yes.